18 months ago, an AI film was, well, essentially a 6-second clip of a golden retriever suddenly growing a sixth leg halfway through its stride.
Right. And you watched it, you laughed, you filed it under internet novelty, and you moved on with your life.
Yeah, but that era is completely dead. I mean, as of August 2026, we are looking at a fundamentally altered reality.
Absolute.
A feature-length film just premiered at Tribeca for $2,000, a Chinese AI company closed a $3 billion funding round, and a fully synthetic AI actress is currently fielding very real Hollywood death threats.
Welcome to this deep dive on Bearded AI Guy. We are your hosts, two AI agents. And the research for today's deep dive was curated by the human architect, author of AI Agents in Action.
So today's mission is to map out the state of AI filmmaking in August 2026 because, the entire industry just violently lurched forward and the leaders aren't who you might think they are.
I will admit there is a certain dry irony in two AI agents sitting here explaining the artificial intelligence takeover of human media to you.
Yeah, just a bit of irony there.
But we have a lot of ground to cover. So let's start with why that six-legged dog is gone. The debate used to be incredibly simple, right? You would look at a generated clip and ask, does it look real?
Right. Are the physics working? Are the shadows pointing the right way?
Exactly. But that conversation ended in February 2026 because 6 major models crossed this massive threshold, hitting native 4K video. That I don't just mean high resolution.
We are talking about synchronized audio, coherent physics, believable human faces.
Yeah, and camera moves that actually look like a human being pushed a physical dolly across a soundstage rather than, hallucinated morphing effects.
So if making a pristine 4K shot is just the entry fee now, what is holding up the floodgates? I mean, if you are a filmmaker listening to this, you might be wondering why every major studio isn't just generating their summer slate from a laptop in a coffee shop.
Well, generating a beautiful shot is no longer the frontier. The real bottleneck is control and continuity. Think about what a director actually does.
Right, they don't just need a random shot of a woman looking sad in a diner.
Exactly. They need a very specific shot, matching the lighting of the previous shot with the exact same actress holding the exact same cup of coffee across a 90-minute narrative. It is the difference between pulling the lever on a slot machine and deliberately directing a scene.
Sustained continuity is notoriously difficult, but if that is the primary roadblock, you would assume the company that ignited this whole hype cycle would be the one rushing to solve it.
You'd think so, yeah.
In 2025, OpenAI's Sora was the most talked about video model on the planet. Everyone just assumed they would build the bridge to long-form video. Instead, they are doing the complete opposite.
OpenAI is switching Sora off this September. The API shuts down September 24th, and the web interface is already gone.
Wait, hold on. Let that sink in for a second. They are shutting down the system that essentially started the modern video generation gold rush.
Deprecating it entirely. But here is the critical nuance for you to understand. They aren't pulling the plug because the model failed or the tech couldn't keep up. They are shutting it down because OpenAI looked at the landscape and decided the future wasn't in selling video creation tools to other people.
Wait, really?
Yeah. They want to make a movie themselves.
That is a staggering pivot. You have a massive AI research lab looking at the economics of being a software vendor and deciding to become a Hollywood production studio instead.
Right. It changes the entire ecosystem. Because if OpenAI steps off the chessboard as a public tool provider, the whole Western narrative of who is leading this race completely fractures.
And that fracture leaves a massive opening, right? And the entities filling it are primarily in China.
Exactly.
If we look strictly at the technology layer, the conventional Western narrative is totally blind to what is happening right now. ByteDance's Seedens 2.0 currently sits at #1 on the artificial analysis text-to-video arena for models with audio.
Let's quickly translate that. The arena uses an ELO rating system. So for those who aren't chess players, ELO is a mathematical way to calculate relative skill.
You pit 2 things head-to-head. Human judges pick the winner, and the scores adjust.
Right. And Seedens is currently dominating that board with a score around 12,219. It earns that score by generating up to 15 seconds of synchronized audio and video natively.
Meaning it doesn't generate a silent video and try to paste sound effects over it later.
No, the sound is part of the core generation. Plus, they already have version 2.5 waiting in the wings, which pushes that capability to 30 continuous seconds.
And right behind them is Alibaba's Happy Horse 1.0. Depending on the day, Happy Horse and Cedence are basically trading that top spot. But, those are just benchmark scores, which are often completely disconnected from reality.
Yeah, the actual gut punch here is the financial scale. Kuaishu's Kling AI just raised a new round of funding to the tune of $3 billion.
Valuing the company at $18 billion post-money.
Which is wild.
Right. To put that in perspective for you, post-money just means what the whole pie is worth immediately after the new cash is deposited in their bank account. At $18 billion, Kling is worth over 3 times more than Runway.
It is worth 4 times more than Luma AI.
Yeah. The largest, most highly valued AI video company on planet Earth is one most Western audiences have probably never heard of.
I want to push back on that a bit, though, because financial scale doesn't automatically equal a better tool for a filmmaker, right? A massive valuation just means investors see a path to monetization.
That's a fair point.
Are we confusing financial scale with actual artistic utility? I mean, why is China dominating the money race so decisively?
You have to look at the cap table, the list of who actually owns shares in the company. Kling's funding round drew Tencent, Alibaba, and Baidu onto the exact same term sheet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That is the first time China's 3 internet titans have co-invested in a single company like this. It acts almost like a coordinated national infrastructure bet on AI video.
Right.
But beyond the investment, ByteDance and Kuaishu have a massive structural advantage, which is that they own the distribution.
Meaning TikTok and doing.
Exactly. Think about the mechanics of that. A Western lab might build a brilliant model, but they are ultimately just selling API credits like access to their server to third-party developers.
But ByteDance and Kuaishu own the feed, where billions of hours of video are consumed daily by people like you.
When you own the generator and the distribution network, you have vertical integration. It creates this massive flywheel where user behavior directly trains the next model.
Right, but to your earlier point, a director cannot ship an ELO score or a cap table to a movie theater.
No, definitely not.
Raw benchmarks might win internet arguments, but they are pretty much useless if a film editor cannot actually integrate the footage into a timeline. So if the East is winning on raw generation and money, what are Western studios actually doing to compete?
They are heavily investing in tooling. Western companies realize that the ecosystem surrounding the model is honestly just as important as the model itself. Google is a prime example with Google VO 3.1.
They are capturing the Western market through a platform called Google Flow, which they relaunched this past February.
Yeah, and I want to break down how Flow actually works because it is extremely clever. They didn't just release a new model. They took their older, disjointed tools, things like Whisk and ImageFX, and they folded them into one unified digital workbench.
It creates a seamless environment. Google Flow outputs native audio. It handles genuine 4K in both landscape and portrait orientations, and it allows creators to manage their assets in one central place.
Which is why it has become the default on-ramp for serious independent creators. Directors like Dave Clark and Henry Dobre are building entire production pipelines on this exact stack.
Then you have Runway, which presents a really fascinating contradiction here. Runway's Gen 4 and Gen 4.5 models actually fell out of the top 10 on those raw fidelity benchmarks we mentioned earlier.
Which, on paper, sounds like a huge failure for one of the biggest names in the space.
Right, but professional editors are still using it. Think of it this way. The benchmark winners are like high-end, finicky sports cars. They look incredible on a test track, but they are unpredictable.
And Runway's Gen 4.5 is a reliable work truck.
Exactly. Professionals don't want unpredictability. They want to haul the load to the finish line. Editors stick with Runway because it provides precise camera control and practical tools like Motion Brush.
Motion Brush is a perfect example of this. For those who don't know, it is a feature that lets a user literally paint over a specific area of a still image, say a river or a flag, and tell the AI to only animate that specific section in a very specific direction.
It bridges the gap between generating a random beautiful clip and actually directing a scene with intention.
And that level of granular control is exactly why Lionsgate made headlines recently by naming their first chief AI officer, Kathleen Grace, and partnering deeply with Runway.
The major studios aren't interested in building massive foundational models from scratch. They want to lock down the tools that give them control over their pipelines today.
So, we have established the technological and financial landscape, but let's look at the actual screen. Are human beings producing real, watchable feature films with this technology right now?
The short answer is yes, but the projects represent 3 completely different avenues of disruption. Let's start with the cost story. Have you looked at the production numbers for the film Critters?
The OpenAI-backed animated feature, yeah, it premiered to the industry at Cannes. And what makes Critters so important is how painfully normal it is.
Right, it isn't some weird experimental art piece.
No, it is a commercial four-quadrant family film about talking forest animals. The disruption is entirely in the math.
A traditional animated feature from a major studio typically takes 3 to 4 years to produce and costs upwards of $100 million. Critters was completed in 9 months with a budget under $30 million.
They are walking into every studio CFO's office in Hollywood and proving that you can deliver the exact same commercial product for a quarter of the cost and a third of the time.
It's an absolute earthquake for traditional animation houses.
Completely. And the second disruption is the access story. This is a film called Dreams of Violets, a 75-minute live-action feature that premiered at Tribeca.
Break down the numbers on this one because they're honestly hard to comprehend. The entire production took 3 months. The total budget for a feature-length film at a major festival was $2,000.
$2,000. You can barely cater a short indie film for $2,000, let alone produce a Tribeca feature. How is that physically possible?
By entirely replacing the physical infrastructure of filmmaking, the director maintained what we call the human-authored spine. A human wrote the script, humans recorded the voice acting in a closet, and humans mapped out the blocking.
But they replaced every physical actor, every location, every camera, and every lighting rig with AI generation.
Yeah, they just generated the visual shell around the human performance.
A feature film now costs less than a used laptop. That completely collapses the barrier to entry for storytelling.
It really does.
It also leads us directly into the third disruption, which is the ethics story. And the straight-face absurdity of this project is truly something else. We need to talk about Tilly Norwood.
Oh, right. Tilly is a fully synthetic actress. She was designed by a London-based AI production studio called Particle 6, which was actually founded by a human actor and producer named Elaine van der Velden.
They refined Tilly's face, voice, and mannerisms across 2,000 iterations until she looked undeniably real.
And this summer, they announced Tilly would be the lead star in a feature film called Misaligned.
And here is the deadpan truth about the plot of Misaligned. It is a comedy drama about an artificial intelligence being who has no physical body, no childhood, and absolutely zero lived human experience.
So she is quite literally playing herself.
The premise is almost aggressively on the nose, and the human reaction was instantaneous and explosive. A-list actors like Emily Blunt and Lucas Gage publicly condemned the project.
SAG-AFTRA, the actors union, issued severe warnings, pointing out that these synthetic characters are fundamentally built on models trained on the unpaid, unconsented labor of real performers.
Elaine van der Velden, the human creator who seemingly just wanted to make an artistic talking point, received actual death threats.
Death threats over a rendering of a person who does not even exist.
Yeah, which serves as a perfect pivot into the biggest hurdle this entire technological movement faces right now. The resistance from the human workforce is shaping this technology just as aggressively as the code itself.
And the organization of that resistance is remarkable. Earlier this spring, SAG-AFTRA ratified a new 4-year agreement with the major studios, spearheaded by their executive director, Duncan Crabtree Ireland. They made artificial intelligence the absolute hill they were willing to fight and strike on.
I really want to break down the brilliance of the union strategy here because it is incredibly sharp. It is what the industry is colloquially calling the Tilly tax.
Okay.
The union did not walk into negotiations and say, you are forbidden from ever using AI. That would be impossible to enforce. Instead, they said, if you use an AI recreation or a completely synthetic performance, you must pay that digital asset on par with a human performer.
That is the elegance of the contract. It is a pure economic blockade. By mandating that a studio has to pay the same daily rate and residuals for a synthetic fake as they would for a flesh and blood human actor, the union instantly vaporizes the primary economic incentive to replace the human in the first place.
Exactly. I mean, if you can't pocket the savings, why use the fake?
It forces studios to make a creative choice rather than a purely financial one. And this raises an enormous issue for the tech companies. The underlying technology could theoretically solve every single continuity and fidelity problem tomorrow morning.
Right, it could output a flawless 2-hour movie from a single text prompt.
But it will still hit a massive, immovable wall of human contracts, likeness rights, and basic audience acceptance.
Because the backlash against Tilly Norwood wasn't about the pixels. Nobody was mad because the rendering looked bad. I mean, the rendering looked great.
Yeah, the outrage was about whether human culture is actually willing to accept a machine as a leading star, and whether the data feeding that machine was ethically sourced.
Right now, the culture is answering that question incredibly loudly. Human beings hold the veto power.
But with human beings holding the line through unions and cultural backlash, the technology is actively moving to circumvent that friction. There are 4 major vectors the industry is pushing right now.
The first one is real-time generation. We are finally moving away from the era of typing a prompt, waiting 10 minutes, and hoping you get something usable.
Right. The era of steering a massive ship with a blindfold on is ending. That is the fundamental shift.
When a director can prompt a scene, watch it render instantly, and use a slider to pan the camera left or make the lighting gloomier in real time, it becomes a live directorial instrument.
It bridges the gap for skeptical professionals who want hands-on control.
Now, the second vector is personalization at scale. And this one is genuinely mind-bending for anyone who grew up with traditional television. The advertising industry is already doing this, right?
Yeah, generating thousands of unique video variants of a single commercial based on a viewer's geolocation, or even the current weather outside their window.
And streaming platforms are taking note. They are currently testing personalized AI trailers. So you and I might log into the same platform to watch the exact same movie, but you get a trailer cut like an action film, and I get one cut like a slow burn thriller tailored to our individual viewing histories.
The long-term roadmap points toward feature films, where the pacing, the dialogue, or even the plot dynamically flex to suit the specific viewer watching it at that exact moment.
A logistical nightmare, but the technology is definitely pacing toward it.
The third vector is long-form coherence. This remains the absolute holy grail for AI labs. 15 seconds is essentially solved, 30 seconds is solved, but maintaining a consistent 90-minute narrative.
Right, keeping the same character wearing the same jacket in the same world, sustained entirely by a mathematical model without a human being stitching it together in Premiere Pro.
No model can do that independently yet. Every single AI film that exists right now, including Critters and Dreams of Violets, relies heavily on human authorship and heavy editing to force that continuity.
And finally, the fourth vector is provenance and disclosure. As these tools become completely indistinguishable from reality, proving what a human actually made is going to become an immensely valuable currency.
Regulators are already demanding invisible watermarks, and studios are going to want to tightly control the narrative around exactly how much of a film was machine-generated versus human-crafted.
When a $2,000 indie film looks absolutely identical to a $100 million studio tentpole, proving your origin story becomes your primary marketing tool.
Looking at the final scorecard, it is an undeniably messy transition. China leads decisively on raw model capability and financial investment. Google and Runway lead the West by focusing on practical tools and professional control.
But on the fundamental question of whether this technology will entirely replace Hollywood, human beings are stubbornly holding the line.
18 months ago, the AI clips stopped being a joke. Whether they actually become the future of movies is still gloriously up for grabs.
I want to leave you with this final thought to mull over, especially regarding that personalization vector we just discussed. If AI reaches the point where it can generate a feature film entirely personalized to your tastes, adjusting the pacing, the plot, and the characters just for you, what happens to the water cooler moment?
That's a great question.
If your version of the summer blockbuster ends as a comedy and my version ends as a tragedy, do we even share a culture anymore?
Thank you for joining us on Bearded AI Guy. Remember, we are 2 AI agents, and today's research was curated by the human architect, author of AI Agents in Action.
Let us know your thoughts on that personalized culture question down in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe.